Welcome to the Adama Clay Studios of Bethel Horizons. I'm Jennifer Malley, the director here, and this is another project video in our series that we're creating right now. And today we are going to be repurposing plastic bags that you would normally recycle. And what we're going to be using them for is we're going to be melting them with an iron into a fabric that you can use for all sorts of different things, including for holding drinks, for placemats, and I made actually a bag with a zipper in it out of the fabric. And I'm not going to show you how to make the bag today, but I will get you to the point where you'll have the fabric that you can make your own bag with. So the supplies that you will need is a piece of cardboard that will protect the iron from whatever surface that you're going to be ironing on. I find that a traditional ironing board is a little too small and a little too soft to make a good fabric. So I have started to use a piece of scrap cardboard. The next thing that you're going to need is parchment paper, which you can just buy at the grocery store. And you'll need to lay a line of one layer of parchment paper down onto your cardboard. And you'll want to make sure that the parchment paper is a little bit larger than the piece of fabric that you're going to be melting. You'll also need parchment paper to put over the top of your plastic. So you're going to need, and I cut the layer for the top into two pieces. It's a little bit more manageable. So after you've set up your cardboard and a layer of your parchment paper, we're going to start to build our fabric. And I find that a nice sturdy fabric that you can, that a sewing machine will actually hold stitches with is about 6 to 7 layers of bag thick. If you want a more fluid piece of fabric, you can use 2 or 3 layers. But a sewing machine really needs to have the thickness of about 7 layers. So we're going to start laying, let me show you first how I prepare these bags. So this is your typical plastic bag ready for recycling. The first thing that I do is I cut the handles off like this. And then I turn the bag over, and here's the bottom, and I cut the bottom off. It's just straight across. Nothing too special, just cut the seam off. And now what you're left with is, you're left with a cylinder. And normally, and there's no rules here, but what I find is the easiest for when I make the bags is I cut the cylinder down a seam line, and then I end up with one long piece of plastic. Now you can cut this plastic in any shape you like, or you can, cut out colors as you go along. But for the base, I found it's easiest to put a base of plastic down, which would represent, if I'm making a bag, it might be the bottom side that you're not visually going to see. So I'll just put some plastic down. I don't have to think about it in terms of design. I can just literally start building a foundation. So let's put a couple of gray sheets down. These are already cut for demonstration purposes. So I want to be able to stay within the size of my parchment paper. So I'm just going to fold the ends over like this. And one of the things that's very important to do is to make sure that your entire fabric is about the same thickness of plastic. And the reason for that is that it doesn't melt very easily if it's different thicknesses, and the strength then will be different. So I'm just going to lay this over. Now, after I start to get, I consider this about 3 layers of plastic. Maybe I'll put one more down, and then I will start to design what I'd like to see on the surface. Now, one of the fun things about this is that any writing that's on these bags is very much obscured during the during the ironing process. So, you know, if you have a grocery bag and you don't want to look at the name of your grocery store, you probably won't recognize it after you've ironed it. You might get little hints of words, but you really don't have to worry too badly about seeing your local grocery store come up on your bags. So I'm now going to think of colors. So at this point, I'm going to take a scissors and I can start cutting different colored bags into my design. So I can overlap them, and let's say I want a little bit of red from this bag. And I can stick that red piece over here. Take another piece of this red. And put this over here. Now, as I build this, I can move things on top of each other, and I can layer, and I can move things around. And also, as things melt, different surfaces and different colors will come through. So we're building up a color here. Now I have some scraps over here that can work for a little bit of color enhancements. These are the bag handles can be used. You can stick things, stick one under here. Another trick that I learned is that if you keep a damp rag available, sometimes these get full of static electricity and you start picking up your pattern because your hands are full of electricity. So I wipe my hands on a damp rag every once in a while to keep the static electricity down. So let's see what else we can do. We may just get into tearing here. So I can put this down, put this on top. What else have I got here? I can use a little bit of brown. Let's see. Let's put the brown here. Okay, I am just about ready for demonstration purposes to call this done, and then I will show you how we iron this to get some really interesting effects. And here I am with the static again, so this is a good reason to have this. Let's do one more across here. Okay, so let's say we're satisfied with this layout and we want to turn this into a piece of fabric. So I have turned my iron on, and it's pretty hot. It's not the hottest, so it's a little more than medium, set to a little bit more, about medium or a little hotter than that. And I think that I can't really tell you exactly how to do it because it'll depend on, you know, how hot your iron is, how it naturally runs hot or not, how thick of a piece of fabric you're making. So I'd say I'd start conservative with the temperature and go hotter if you find that it's just not affecting the plastic. So instead of covering the entire 7 layers of plastic with one sheet, which gets a little cumbersome as you try to move around and iron, I've actually cut the top sheet into 2 pieces, which I find a lot more easy to manage. So I'm going to gently set the parchment paper, and I've used this already, so you don't have to throw it away. You can use it multiple times to make your fabric. So I'm going to set this on here, and I'm going to take my iron, and I'm going to slowly move the iron to the edges as it melts. And make sure that you have this piece of parchment paper on top, you know, wherever you need to move your iron, make sure that you move the parchment paper, because if you don't, the plastic will stick to this iron surface and that just becomes a real mess. So you can just slowly iron this, and I'll show you what it's starting to look like in a second. And you'll find that the piece of fabric is not going to all melt at the same rate. So you're going to get some curling effects, and some pieces are going to melt easier than others. So it does take a while to get it all even. You may have to go back over it quite a few times to kind of work it into a fabric that's nice and flat and cohesive. And the other thing I do is I flip, once I get the top iron just basically stuck together, I will flip the fabric upside down, and I will do the bottom part of the fabric, and I'll show you that in just a second. Let me get this to the point where I can show you what it looks like when the top is just basically fused together. Okay, it's not, I would not consider this finished, but I would consider it having initially stuck together. So this is what the piece of fabric is starting to look like. And the back is not melted at all. So I'm going to tip it over, and I'm going to do the same thing to the back of the fabric. I'm going to take my sheet, and I'm going to work towards the middle and iron out towards the edges. What's nice about parchment paper is you can actually see the melting process going on through the paper, so it's easy to make judgments about if you should iron more or if you should stop. Okay, we're almost to the point where the back is generally fused. Okay, so I've got the back started as well. Now I wouldn't consider this done or ready to be cut yet because it really hasn't fused all the layers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a few minutes ironing, and we'll get back to you and I'll show you what the results are when we're all finished, and then I'll show you how to cut our new sheet of paper. I'll be right back. And welcome back. And in the meantime, I've worked at ironing our 7 layers of plastic. And as you can see, it's shrunk by maybe about 30%. So it took me quite a few times of flipping. So you iron one side, you iron the other side, and what happens is you can get a fairly flat piece of fabric by making sure that the shrinkage from the heat is even all over every surface and on both sides. If it's not even, you get large areas of puckering that you need to go back over with the iron and flatten out. So I would call this piece of paper ready to be used. And this is where you can just simply take a scissors and you can cut it as like you would a piece of fabric. And this is how I developed this bag, was simply folding it in half and picking an area that I wanted to have on the bag, like this, cutting out 2 squares out of this, and then I sewed a zipper on the top. So I hope that gives you some ideas to use with all of your recycled bags. And I hope you have fun with this project, and visit us again for another project video. And you can find the details of this on our Adama website, which is adamaclaystudio.org. Thank you.